You are listening to station KZRH, the voice of the Philippines, reaching you from Manila, the Philippine Islands. Tonight, as we have previously announced, we have a special presentation to make, and now turn you over to our main studio. General Wainwright.
How do you do, one and all? This is Marcelo Victoriano speaking to you from the main studio of KZRH, the voice of the Philippines, and calling the attention of everyone, everywhere. Everyone, everywhere, all Filipinos and Americans all over the country, and all of you Filipino and American officers and men are still trying to resist the overwhelming forces of the Japanese Imperial Army and Navy. Listen to your commanding general. From the bomb-splattered, shell-wrecked sectors of Corregidor and to the hot, dusty roadways of Bataan and several other provinces, he has sped and made his way to this city, accompanied by high-ranking officers of the Japanese Army. He has come to speak to all of you, to give you his own message, in his own words, from his own lips. Listen now to General Jonathan Wainwright.
This is Lieutenant General J.M. Wainwright. Message for General William F. Sharp, commanding the Mindanao and Visayan forces. Repeat. For General Sharp, commanding the Mindanao and Visayan forces. Anyone receiving this message, please notify General Sharp at once. The message: by virtue of the authority vested in me by the President of the United States, I, as commanding general of the United States forces in the Philippine Islands, hereby resume direct command of Major General Sharp, commander of the Visayan Mindanao Force, and of all troops under his command. I now give a direct order to General Sharp. I repeat, those receiving it, please notify General Sharp at once. Subject: surrender to Major General William F. Sharp, Jr., commanding Visayan and Mindanao forces. The message: to put a stop to further useless sacrifice of human life on the fortified islands, today I tendered to Lieutenant General Hammer, the Commander-in-Chief of the Imperial Japanese forces in the Philippines, the surrender of the 4 harbor defense forts of Manila Bay. General Hammer declined to accept my surrender unless it included the forces under your command. It became apparent that the garrisons of these forces would be eventually destroyed by aerial and artillery bombardment and by infantry supported by tanks which have overwhelmed Corregidor. After leaving General Homer with no agreement between us, I decided to accept, in the name of humanity, his proposal, and tendered at midnight, 6-7 May 1942, to the senior Japanese officer on Corregidor, the formal surrender of all American and Philippine Army troops in the Philippine Islands. You will therefore be guided accordingly and will, repeat, will, surrender all troops under your command to the proper Japanese officer. This decision, on my part, you will realize, was forced upon me by means entirely beyond my control. Colonel Jesse T. Trawick, Jr., General Staff Corps, my Assistant Chief of Staff, G3, who will deliver this letter to you personally, is fully empowered to act for me. You are hereby ordered by me as a senior American Army officer in the Philippine Islands to scrupulously carry out the provisions of this letter, as well as such additional instructions as this staff officer may give you. You will repeat the complete text of this letter and such other instructions as Colonel Trawick will give you by radio to General MacArthur. However, let me emphasize that there must be on your part no thought of disregarding these instructions. Failure to fully and honestly carry them out can have only the most disastrous results. Colonel Horan and Colonel Nagar, please listen. Also, General Sharp, continue. The following message is for Colonel J.P. Horan, commanding American and Philippine troops in the mountain provinces, and for Colonel Guillermo Ricard, commanding Philippine and American forces in the Cagayan Valley. Repeat, for Colonel J.P. Horan and for Colonel Guillermo Ricard. Anyone receiving this message, please inform these officers at once. Before they stop to further useless sacrifice of human life on the fortified islands, yesterday I tendered to Lieutenant General Homer, Commander-in-Chief of the Imperial Japanese Forces in the Philippines, the surrender of the 4 harbor forts of Manila Bay. General Homer declined to accept my surrender unless it included the forces under your commands. Both Colonel Horan and Colonel Nagar. It became apparent that the garrisons of the fortified islands would be eventually destroyed by aerial and artillery bombardment and by infantry supported by tanks which have overwhelmed Corregidor. After leaving General Homo with no agreement between us, I decided to accept, in the name of humanity, his proposal and tendered at midnight, 7 May 1942, to the senior Japanese officer on Corregidor, the formal surrender of all American and Philippine Army troops in the Philippine Islands. I repeat, of all American and Philippine Army troops in the Philippine Islands. You will therefore be guided accordingly and will, repeat, will, surrender all troops under your command to the proper Japanese officer. This decision on my part, you will realize, was forced upon me by circumstances entirely beyond my control. The staff officer who delivered it to you is fully empowered to act for me. You are hereby ordered by me as the senior American Army officer in the Philippine Islands to be scrupulously carry out the provisions of this letter, as well as such additional instructions as my staff officer may give you in my name. I have now instructions applicable to the commands of General Schatz, of Colonel Horan, and of Colonel Nakar. Again, please inform these officers if you hear this broadcast. The following instructions apply to the surrender of your troops and must be very promptly, very vigorously, and very accurately carried out. All troops of the American and Filipino armies operating in other parts of the Philippine Islands than the harbor defenses of Manila Bay will immediately and voluntarily disarm and take the following additional steps. No, will immediately and voluntarily disarm and take the following additional steps. Those troops operating in northern Luzon, particular attention, Colonel Horan and Colonel Nakar, will assemble at Bataan or Bontoc, and the commanding officers will present themselves to the Japanese commander in Baguio and notify that officer of their surrender. Particular attention, General Sharp. Those troops remaining on the island of Panay will assemble in the northern environs of Iloilo City. Those on Negros Island in the vicinity of Bacolod City. Repeat, Panay troops assemble northern environ Iloilo. Those on Negros in vicinity of Bacolod. And in each case, the commanding officers will present themselves to the Japanese Army in Iloilo and notify of their surrender. Reference Boho. Reference Boho. Those troops remaining on the island of Boho will assemble in the vicinity of Roai, R-O-A-I. And the commanding officers will present themselves to the Japanese Army in Cebu Note, commanders of troops in Bohol assemble their troops at Hawaii and themselves report to deliver their surrender at Cebu City. Reference Lady and Samar. Those remaining on the island of Lady and the island of Samar will assemble in the vicinity of Tacloban and Catalogan, respectively. Repeat. Troops on Lady assemble in the vicinity of Tacloban. Troops on Samar assemble in the vicinity of Catalogan. And the commanding officers will present themselves to the Japanese Army in Legazpi and notify of their surrender. Note that the commanders of troops both on the islands of Lady and Samar assemble their troops respectively at Tacloban and Catalogan, and they themselves, the commanding officers, report to the Japanese Army in Legazpi. Reference Mindanao. Shell shock particularly those American and Philippine Army troops in the districts of Lanao and Zamboanga on the island of Mindanao. Will assemble in the vicinity of Iligan. Repeat. Troops from Lanao and Zamboanga assemble in the vicinity of Iligan. And those remaining in the districts of Malibali and the Agusan Basin, repeat, those in the vicinity of Malibali and Agusan Basin assemble in the vicinity of Malibali or Butuan. Malibali or Butuan. And their commanding officers then give notice of their surrender. Those on other islands, not named above, assemble at convenient places and notify the nearest Japanese Army officer of their surrender. All commanders note this particularly. This order must be carried out within 4 days of its receipt. This order must be carried out within 4 days of its receipt. It is absolutely prohibited that arms, materials, vessels, or any other equipment or establishment be destroyed, burned, or dispersed. Repeat. Arms of all types and all calibers, all military equipment and munitions will be kept intact and will not be burned, dispersed, or destroyed. Easily movable portable weapons will be gathered in the vicinity of the assembling places of the troops. This refers to machine guns, small arms, and other equipment that may be carried by the individual. Heavy materials and equipment to be kept intact, and the location thereof reported, accompanied by a sketch. Vessels in waters other than those of Manila Bay will proceed to the port of Cagayan, Mindanao. Vessels other than those in the waters of Manila Bay will proceed to the port of Cagayan, Mindanao. Defensive installations of all types, especially those in areas wherein land or sea mines are laid, will be reported, accompanied by a sketch, and the actual position will be distinctly indicated by suitable means, if at all possible to do so. Japanese prisoners of war, if any, will be released to Japanese military authorities immediately. Further orders will be given if necessary. The Japanese Army and Navy will not cease their operations until they fully recognize the faithfulness in execution of these orders. If and when such faithfulness is recognized, the Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese forces in the Philippine Islands will order that firing be ceased after taking all conditions and circumstances into consideration. Attention, Colonel Horan and Colonel Nakara. The staff officer who will carry my written instructions to Colonel Horan will be Colonel Galbraith, General Staff Corps, a member of my staff. The staff officer to carry the instructions to Colonel Nakar will be Lieutenant Kalikuka, Quartermaster Corps, and officer of my staff. I repeat, for the benefits of General Sharp, Colonel Horan, and Colonel Nakar, the complete text of the detailed instructions which must be faithfully carried out in order that this surrender be properly executed. All
all troops operating in parts of the Philippine Islands other than the harbor defenses of Manila Bay will disarm voluntarily and immediately and take the following steps. Repeat, disarm voluntarily and immediately. Attention, Bataan and Mekar. Those troops remaining in northern Luzon will assemble at Bayambang or Bontoc, and the commanding officers will present themselves to the Japanese Army in Baguio and give notification of their surrender. Report at Baguio and render your surrender. Attention sharp. Those troops remaining on the island of Panay will assemble in the northern environs of Iloilo City. Repeat, Panay troops assemble in the northern environs of Iloilo City. Those on Negros in the vicinity of Bacolod. Negros troops to Bacolod. And the commanding officers of both regions present themselves to the Japanese Army in Iloilo and give notification of their surrender. Note, the commanders of troops on Panay, as well as the commander on Negros, both assemble at Iloilo themselves personally and notify the Japanese Army. The troops are assembled respectively at Iloilo City and Bacolod. Those troops remaining on Bohol will assemble in the vicinity of Roy, and the commanding officer present himself to the Japanese Army at Cebu. Note, troops assembled at Roy, commander reports at Cebu. Those troops remaining on the islands of Leyte and Samar assembled at Tacloban and Catbalogan. Troops of Leyte at Tacloban, troops on Samar, Catbalogan. And the commanding officers in both cases report and 10 of their surrenders at Legazpi. For Mindanao, those troops remaining in the districts of Lanao and Zamboanga on the island of Mindanao will assemble in the vicinity of Iligan. Lanao troops and Zamboanga troops to Iligan, and those remaining in the district of Mali Valley and Ogsan Basin, Mali Valley and Ogsan Basin in the vicinity of Malabali or Butuan. And the commanding officers there give notice of their surrender. Repeat, troops in the vicinity of Malabali and Agusan Basin assembled at Malabali or Butuan, and their commanding officers there surrender. On all other islands, not named, troops will be assembled at convenient places, and notification made to the nearest Japanese Army officers of their surrender. All note particularly
And I urge upon you that this be vigorously and promptly carried out. No. This order must be carried out within 4 days of the time of its receipt. This order must be carried out within 4 days of the time of its receipt. The destruction, burning, or dispersing of arms, materials, munitions, vessels, and any other military establishment is strictly prohibited, either in part or in whole. No weapons or other munitions of war are to be destroyed or dispersed. They are to be kept intact. Portable, easily moved weapons will be assembled in the vicinity of the assembly area of the troop. Heavy weapons, materials, and equipment not readily portable will be kept intact, and the location thereof be reported accompanied by a sketch. Vessels in waters other than those of Manila Bay will proceed to the port of Cagayan, Mindanao. Vessels other than those in Manila Bay proceed to Cagayan, Mindanao. Defensive measures and installations, especially those areas wherein land mines or sea mines are laid, will be reported with a sketch. And the actual position will be distinctly indicated by suitable means, if at all possible, to do so. Japanese prisoners of war, if any, will be released to the Japanese military authorities immediately. Prisoners of war released to the Japanese military authorities immediately. If found to be necessary. The Japanese Army and Navy will not cease their operations until they recognize the faithfulness of execution of these orders. These orders must be carried out faithfully and accurately. Otherwise, the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy continue their operations. If and when such faithfulness of execution is recognized, the Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese forces in the Philippine Islands will order that all firing be ceased. General Wainwright signing off.